I definitely think one of the more interesting players to keep an eye on going into the 2019 season is going to be Marquise Brown, the rookie that the Ravens just drafted in the first round of the 2019 draft. The reason I'm more kind of interested in just seeing how he'll play is largely simply because the Ravens haven't had a good wide receiver in quite some time now. I mean, I shouldn't say haven't had a good receiver. They've had some good receivers, but they haven't had like a true number one receiver in a seemingly long time. The last true number one receiver I can remember really was Anquan Bolton. I can't really remember anybody since then. So drafting Marquise Brown in the first round is really the Baltimore Ravens' way of trying to address that need and try to get a true number one receiver, I think. However, getting Brown was definitely kind of an interesting move, I think, because, he doesn't necessarily fit that Ravens style offense exactly the way you would think he would. I mean, you're thinking run-heavy offense, you're probably thinking you want some guys who can block, some guys who are maybe better jump ball receivers than just speed guys like Brown is. That might be a mindset, but I don't really think that should be the mindset. I think you want a guy like Brown. I think his speed and just his ability to run routes can actually be very beneficial for the Ravens. And so when he was in this dress rehearsal game, so to speak, I was definitely interested in seeing how he'll perform, and I thought he played pretty well. He definitely had his moments, and so let's just jump into it, and we'll start things off with this play. That's where Brown is. He's going to be on the bottom half of the screen, and he's going to be running a curl route on this one, which is actually a pretty good situation, because while this is zone coverage, the person who is in the zone on the bottom half of the screen, the corner who's in charge of covering the flat, he's playing pretty far off. As you see, he's playing a good 10 yards further down the field than Brown is. So by the time Brown does cut, this now means that he could potentially get open since the corner is playing so far off, so this is definitely a good route for Brown. But one thing you have to keep in mind before this ball is even snapped is Brown's blazing speed. A lot of corners, a lot of defensive players are going to try to make sure they don't get beat by Brown deep down the field. They're expecting Brown to be the guy who takes the top off the defense, who runs deep routes, so they're definitely going to be playing a little bit farther off than typically you would against some other lesser receivers. And so what you'll see once this ball is snapped is he is appearing as though he's going to be running deep down the field. He's definitely running very quickly and trying to get up to a top speed as quick as he can. So as a defensive player, you do have to make sure you don't let him get by you. I mean, Brown claimed that he was going to break the record for fastest 40-yard dash before he got injured. I don't know if that's true or not, but he feels as though that's the case. And honestly, he definitely is a very fast guy. There's no doubt about that. But this is key. I think a lot of guys on these curl routes kind of don't take this part of the curl route seriously. They kind of just want to cut as soon as possible, but you can't do that. You have to sell as though you're running something else that's maybe not a curl route, so that way when you do stop, this now means that it can be an easy completion for you. Because watch, right when he stops, he's easily open, and then he's even able to go down and protect himself. So I think that's a really good route from Brown in my opinion. It might not have gone for a ton of yards, it might not be what we were promised when we saw Marquise Brown get drafted by the Ravens, because we're thinking, okay, well then deep passes, correct? But that's not the only thing he can do. He's far from a one-trick pony. I mean, this guy was drafted in the first round for a reason. So if you can be successful in those types of routes, well then defensive players will say, hey, I can't let him keep getting open, so I'll try to break and maybe jump some of these routes, but then he could get by you and get wide open down the field. So just having that blazing speed and being a great deep ball threat kind of just opens everything up in a lot of ways. And then because he's a good route runner, he can take advantage of things like that. And speaking of his speed, this play is another way where they're going to try to use his speed to his advantage. That's where Brown is on the screen, and that's the corner who's going to be in charge of covering him. And this is actually just going to be a wide receiver screen with no blockers. He's all alone on an island. They're just going to pass it to Brown as quick as possible and see if he can pick up some yards. It's kind of just a play, it's the preseason, so they're kind of saying, okay, Brown, show us what you got. However, this throw is actually going to be a little bit high and a little bit farther behind Brown, so by the time he gets the ball, he's not really in great position to try to run the ball down the field. I mean, as you see, while he is at the line of scrimmage right now, his body is kind of turned. He had to turn his body to try to make this catch. Similar to the last play I showed you, where you're playing deep far off of him because you want to make sure that he doesn't get by you. And I think Baltimore probably even says, hey, on plays like this, Brown, don't move. We'll just throw quick screen passes, try to pick up 5 yards. But at the same time, I think Baltimore would also prefer it if their quarterback makes a better throw. That was kind of a tough throw, and now Brown's body is a little bit more turned. You would like him to be essentially facing his intended defender as opposed to just sort of almost having his back towards him. And of course, with another eagle in that area, he doesn't really have time to try to juke anybody out. He kind of has to just get as many yards as quick as possible. And so that's going to kind of be what he does. You watch how he just turns and just kind of runs up and picks up 6 yards on that play. Again, nothing crazy, but you like to see that out of a receiver. I mean, that's kind of why you can't play off of him too far deep. I mean, you're playing 8 yards off of him at the start of that play, so as a quarterback, you can just simply throw it to him. You pick up 5 or 6 yards because he has great speed, and then all of a sudden, now it's a 2nd down and 4. So what do you do if you're a corner on that next play? Well, now you almost have to play press coverage, or at least play a little bit farther in so they don't do it again. There was also this one I like from Brown where it's going to be a cover 0, and Brown is running an out route to the top half of the screen. And so typically on a cover 0, you think that an out route's not necessarily the best route, but hey, it is a route that can get open against man coverage, and that actually is where the quarterback is going to look to throw the ball to. Because that's the other thing about a cover 0, is you don't necessarily have time to look around and see who's going to get the most open. You just basically got to try to find somebody who could be open, and that's what you're supposed to do on a cover 0. Because of course there will be 6 defenders rushing the passer, and you only have 5 offensive linemen, so in theory somebody should get completely free to try to hit you, so you have to make this throw quickly. And so for McSorley here, he's not even going to hesitate. The second he gets the ball, he's throwing it in Brown's way. So I'm assuming he read the play pre-snap, realized it was going to be a cover 0, and just wanted to get the ball off, so I would say that's a pretty good play by him. But of course the problem is, if you look at Brown right here, I mean, he's not even facing the ball, and the ball's already in the air. It's kind of what you have to do in a cover 0, just try to get the ball off as quick as possible, but now Brown's going to have to turn his head and basically catch the ball as soon as he turns his head. This play is going to kind of test Brown's awareness in a sense. However, look at how he is able to turn his head over and still make this catch. Very good play from Brown in my opinion. That's not easy to do. I mean, making plays like that, it really isn't. You ever have somebody throw something at you and say, think fast? Well, that's kind of what happened right there. He had to think fast, but that's exactly what he did, and he made the catch. So I say give him credit. I'd say that's a very good play. Now, there's one thing I noticed about Brown, and this actually, I thought it was going to be a negative until I realized that it's actually maybe not quite as big of a negative as I would have thought. That's where he is on the screen. This is actually going to be a run to the top half of the screen. So, okay, so he's going to be blocking on this play, so there's not really too much he has to worry about here. You know, yes, get up to the top half of the screen, make sure the corner doesn't get in position to try to make a play, but at the same time, I mean, let's be honest, it's the preseason. The corner doesn't want to have to try to make a tackle anyways, so there's really not much Brown's going to have to do here. However, one thing I noticed about Brown is notice how he very slowly kind of just jogs up to get into his position. He's not even really trying to make any sort of sell whatsoever that this could be a passing play. He's basically just admitting that it's a running play, which isn't a terrible thing to do, but in a vacuum, I would have probably said that that's a negative. Not a major one, but you are kind of giving your hand away that, hey, it is going to be a running play, and who knows, if you do have a very competitive corner, maybe he does run up to the top half of the screen to try to make this tackle. I'm sure in the regular season, you definitely would see corners be doing that. However, the reason I'm not as low on it as I probably would have been in different situations is because of what happened later in the game on this play. This is only about a few minutes later, and I want to take a look at Brown and the man who's in charge of covering him on the top half of the screen here. Basically, watch how Brown is going to do the same thing he did last time, just slowly walk up to that intended corner. And so if you're a corner, you might be thinking, okay, here we go, it's another run, probably not even in my direction whatsoever. However, this is clearly, as you see if you look at the quarterback, this is a passing play. So what is Brown going to do? Well, then he tries to run the rest of his route. And granted, he doesn't actually get too open, and the pass was thrown almost immediately after, so it didn't really matter. But I'm not going to be results-oriented. I like that from Brown. To me, that shows that Brown is willing to play the chess match between a corner and a receiver. These types of positions, whether it's a corner against a receiver or whether it's an offensive lineman against a defensive lineman, it's very similar to boxing in a lot of ways. Where you want to keep mixing things up, you want to do things differently, so that way you can outsmart your opponent and gain an advantage. Well, on the surface, it might just look like two guys hitting each other, or one guy trying to run faster than another guy. There's actually a lot more to it than that. And so when you see a rookie receiver who's willing to use his brain and try to outsmart opposing corners, I think that's good. Again, it's kind of what I expect a veteran receiver to do. It's what I expect a guy who's been in the league even for a couple of years to do. But for a rookie receiver who's never even played an NFL game, it is nice to see that he's doing that. That was actually probably my biggest takeaway from this game, is he looked like an NFL-ready player out there. I mean, he was already doing the little things pretty well. And worth mentioning, receiver is one of those positions that a young player can kind of adjust to the NFL relatively quickly. I mean, it's not quite on running back level, but you do kind of expect when you draft a rookie receiver in the first round for him to have some positive impact in that first round. But watch, here's another play I liked, where it's going to be zone coverage in a goal line situation, and Brown's route is going to be that one right over there. But what I really liked about it is look at how he's going to go about it. He doesn't just run straight up the middle the way a lot of guys would. Look at how he's going to kind of run up to the top half of the screen at first. The beginning part of a route is so important because at this point, his opposing defender has no idea where he's going. He could be running to the top half of the screen, he could be running deep, or he could be running to the left side of the screen, or he could even be cutting back in. There's so many options at this point. So when he does cut over the middle, he does actually get kind of open. The quarterback didn't see him, but, you know, he was pretty open. I know that these things might seem small right now, but I actually do think that they will matter in a big way once he actually gets to playing some NFL games. In the NFL, the talent level is just so much higher, so these little things are incredibly necessary when everyone is a really good player. There are some guys that when they get into the league, they kind of take their talent for granted, and they say, hey, I'm more talented than everybody, I can make these types of plays. But then they'll play a few regular season games and realize, oh, okay, I was wrong. There's some really talented players here. I need to work on my fundamentals. I'm going to need to work on every little thing if I'm going to play at an elite level at this level, which is the NFL. But it's nice to see that Brown already realizes that. So, you know, I like that. I like those little things. But anyways, that was my video on Marquise Brown. I hope you guys enjoyed watching it. And as always, thanks for watching.